A police officer rescues a lost dog, and what's around the animal's neck leaves him speechless. On the cold, rainy night, the darkness seemed to swallow the lonely road of the Blue Creek suburbs. Lieutenant Nathan Cross sat behind the wheel, his eyes focused through the rain-smeared windshield. A long shift had just ended, and he was eager to return to the quiet of his small apartment, the only place that kept him away from the chaos of his life as a police officer. Suddenly, the headlights shone on a small figure crossing the road. Nathan slammed on the brakes, his heart racing. When the car stopped, he saw it, a small dog, soaked to the bone, trembling in the cold rain. Its fur was covered in mud, and a streak of dark red blood ran from its hind leg. But it was the animal's eyes that made Nathan freeze. Eyes full of pain, fear, but still glistening with a faint glimmer of hope. Nathan opened the car door and stepped out. "Hey, little one, it's okay. Don't be scared," he whispered, his voice trying to stay gentle. The dog looked at him, tilting its head slightly, but then it turned and ran away. Nathan immediately chased after it. His shoes splashed in the cold puddles, but he didn't care. "Don't run," he called, his voice lost in the sound of the rain. In the distance, the headlights of a pickup truck flicked on. Two tall figures stepped out, and a hoarse voice echoed through the night. "It's running that way. Catch it now." Nathan stopped, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "What are you doing?" he asked, his hand already resting on the gun at his side. The man stepped closer, holding a metal rod. "None of your business. Get lost." But Nathan didn't back down. Seeing the small dog huddled in the corner, shivering, a surge of anger rose within him. "None of my business? What are you planning to do with it?" The man sneered, his eyes cold. "If you ask again, you'll regret it." But Nathan only tightened his grip on the gun, his gaze unwavering. "Get lost before I do something you won't forget." The rain kept falling, but within Nathan, a fire burned. The small dog looked at him, its eyes showing a hint of relief, as if it knew it had found a savior in the midst of its nightmare. Nathan closed the car door, trying to keep the drenched little dog from getting any colder. Max, the name that suddenly came to his mind when he saw the dog's eyes full of endurance and resilience, curled up on the passenger seat, shivering. Despite the blood on his hind leg and his emaciated body, which was nothing but skin and bones, the dog still tried to raise his head and look at him, as if to say thank you. "It's okay, Max. I'll help you," Nathan whispered, gently stroking the dog's cold, wet fur. The anger he felt towards those who had been chasing Max still boiled inside him. But looking into those fearful yet trusting eyes, Nathan knew he had to prioritize saving him first. Back at the small apartment, Nathan carefully carried Max into the living room. In his arms, the dog felt as light as air, as if all the life had been drained from him. "What are you? That makes people hunt you like this," he muttered, laying Max down on a warm blanket that had already been spread out. Nathan went to get the first aid kit. When he returned, Max had curled up in a corner, his eyes wide open with fear. "Hey, it's okay," Nathan said, trying to keep his voice as gentle as possible. He knelt down and extended his hand. "I just want to help you, okay?" Slowly, Max brought his nose closer to Nathan's hand, sniffed a little, then sighed. As if sensing the safety, he allowed Nathan to examine his hind leg, where the wound was still bleeding. Nathan sighed when he realized it wasn't an ordinary wound. "Rubber bullet," he whispered, his eyes filled with anger. Who would do this to a dog? While cleaning the blood, Nathan discovered long scars on Max's back, marks of brutal torture. Every time his hand touched them, Max flinched, his eyes panicked, darting around. No, don't be scared. I won't hurt you," Nathan whispered, his heart tightening. But what stunned him the most was a small tattoo on Max's belly, etched in black ink with a strange symbol. A number and a triangle inside a circle. "What is this?" Nathan wondered, his mind filled with unspoken questions. Max looked at Nathan, his eyes as if wanting to say something. Nathan placed his hand on Max's head and gently petted him. "What have you been through, little one? Don't worry, I won't let anyone hurt you again." At that moment, Max tilted his head slightly, his eyes shifting from fear to trust, as if the dog understood Nathan's promise. It was late, but Nathan couldn't sleep. He sat beside Max, scrolling through his phone, looking for information. His thoughts were tangled. What does that symbol mean? Why did they want to catch him? And why was Max tortured like that? The weak morning light filtered through the curtains, casting onto Nathan's tired face. He had dozed off on the sofa, one hand still resting on Max's back as a silent promise of protection. Max curled up on the blanket, occasionally twitching his ears when hearing strange sound from outside. Although safe, the dog had not yet escaped the shadows of the horrors it had endured. Nathan rubbed his eyes, stood up, and immediately checked on Max. "You okay, kid?" he asked, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. Max opened his eyes and looked up at him, still alert. But when Nathan gently placed his hand on his head, Max didn't pull away. He only nuzzled his head into Nathan's palm. "All right, you'll be fine," Nathan whispered, though he could feel the unease in his own voice. The wounds on Max's body weren't the only thing troubling him. The mysterious symbol on his belly kept lingering in his mind. After a simple breakfast, a few slices of bread for Nathan and some wet food for Max, they sat in silence. Nathan opened his laptop and decided to start searching. He typed in what he knew: triangle symbol inside a circle, related to trained dogs. The first results were nothing noteworthy, just articles about research groups or typical animal training programs. But then, on the third page, Nathan paused. An old article from 5 years ago appeared with the headline, "The Animal Trade Network. What happens in secret labs?" Nathan opened the article. It mentioned an organization called Genesis Corp, accused of kidnapping and training animals for illegal purposes, from drug testing to training dogs for dangerous missions. At the end of the article, there was an image of a familiar symbol, a triangle inside a circle. "What did they do to you, Max?" Nathan whispered, his eyes never leaving the screen. Max lay at his feet, as if sensing something, and curled closer, his gaze distant. Nathan knew he needed more information, and there was only one place that could help him: Clara's clinic. He quickly got Max into the car and drove there. Clara, an old friend and the only vet Nathan trusted, greeted them with a gentle smile. But when she saw Max, her expression became serious. "You still haven't given up on bringing trouble home, huh, Nathan?" Clara said, her voice tinged with concern. "Let me take a look at this dog." Clara carefully examined Max, touching each scar and studying the symbol on his belly. She shook her head slightly, sighing. "Nathan, this symbol is not normal. It's not just a mark of a lab. It's the symbol of a secret research group I've heard of before. But I didn't think they were still active." Nathan furrowed his brow. "Research group? What do you mean?" Clara removed her gloves and looked directly at him. "Genesis Corporation. They were once involved in training animals for inhumane purposes, but all information about them has been hidden for a long time. The animals they captured were traumatized both physically and mentally. Max, he's a victim." Nathan looked down at Max, a mix of guilt and anger rising within him. "What did they do to him?" Clara shook her head. "I don't know, but dogs from Genesis Corp were often trained to carry out dangerous missions. When they were no longer useful, they were disposed of." Nathan clenched his fists. "I can't let this go on. If Genesis Corp is still operating, I'll find them. And I'll protect Max." Clara looked at him, her expression a mix of worry and sympathy. "You've always been stubborn, Nathan. But be careful. This is no small group. We're talking about people who will do anything to cover up the truth." Back home, Nathan sat beside Max. He stroked the dog, feeling each scar on his body. Max looked up at him, his eyes seeming to say, "Keep going." "You've been through enough, Max," Nathan said, his voice low. "We'll find the truth. And I promise, I won't let anyone hurt you again." Max rested his head on Nathan's hand, as if accepting the promise. But deep inside, Nathan knew this journey was only just beginning, and it wouldn't be easy. Nathan sat in the darkness of the living room, the light from the laptop screen casting a glow on his contemplative face. The information about Genesis Corp was becoming clearer, an organization that had been shut down after scandals involving illegal experiments, but there were rumors that they were still secretly operating under various disguises. Names, fake addresses, all led to an abandoned industrial area on the outskirts of Blue Creek. Nathan turned to Max, the dog curled up beside him, breathing steadily but still twitching slightly at every sound. He gently stroked Max's head, feeling the warmth of the dog through his palm. "You brought me here, Max. Now, we need to go even further," he said, his voice low but firm. Evening, at the industrial area. Nathan parked his car a short distance from the industrial area to avoid detection. The weather had begun to turn cold, and the damp air made him feel stifled. Max sat in the back seat, his sharp eyes scanning the window, ears perked as if ready for anything that might happen. Nathan opened the car door, lowering his voice. "Let's go, Max. But this time, be careful." Max jumped to the ground and followed him slowly. The two moved silently toward the warehouse area, where faint lights seeped from the windows, partially blocked by rusted metal shutters. The sounds inside became clearer as Nathan approached. The dragging of metal, whispering voices, and barking dogs. Nathan stopped, his gaze tense. Genesis is still operating. What are they doing here? He signaled for Max to crouch down, while he maneuvered through old crates and piles of trash. A side door of the warehouse creaked open, revealing a long, dark hallway inside. Nathan silently took a deep breath and entered, with Max close behind. Inside the warehouse. The air inside the warehouse was thick with the smell of chemicals and the stench of animals. Nathan looked around, his eyes quickly adjusting to the darkness. At the far end of the room, he saw large cages stacked on top of each other. A few dogs lay motionless inside, their bodies emaciated and trembling. Nathan's heart tightened. "What have you had to endure here?" he whispered, his eyes flashing with anger. Max let out a low growl at the sight, but Nathan placed a hand on the dog's head to calm him. "Take it easy, Max. We'll help them." Nathan moved closer to the cages, but just as he was about to cut the lock, footsteps echoed behind him. "Stay where you are." A cold voice rang out, causing Nathan to turn around in surprise. A tall man in work clothes stood there, holding a metal rod. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" he yelled, his eyes full of threat. Nathan stood his ground, holding up his police badge. "I'm Lieutenant Nathan Cross. I want to know what the hell is going on here, and why these dogs are being kept like this." The man laughed, a cold and mocking sound. "Who do you think you are, sneaking in here? You have no idea what organization you're messing with, cop." Nathan clenched his fist, trying to stay calm. "I don't care who you are, but the only thing I know is I won't let you harm any more animals." The man stepped closer, his gaze full of challenge. "This is none of your business, and you don't know what you're dealing with. Leave now before it's too late." Nathan felt the tension rise in the air. Max stood beside him, eyes fixed on the man, his growling growing louder. "Max, stay calm," Nathan whispered, but his eyes never left the man in front of him. The situation turned. At that moment, from behind the man, a sound echoed, the dragging of a cage. Another person appeared, pulling a severely injured dog out of the cage, its body nearly lifeless. Nathan saw the scene and his anger surged. "Let that dog go now," he shouted, his voice commanding. The man only sneered, but before he could respond, Max lunged forward. The dog jumped toward the man, barking loudly, causing him to retreat in fear. Nathan seized the moment, quickly subduing the man and slamming him against the wall. "Now speak," Nathan growled, his eyes cold. "Who's behind all of this?" The man gritted his teeth, remaining silent, but Nathan knew he had struck fear into him. In that tense moment, Nathan realized that what he had just uncovered was only the tip of the iceberg. But one thing was clear. He wouldn't stop, no matter what he had to face. Max stood beside Nathan, his eyes seeming to give him strength. Together, they were ready to face a battle they knew would change everything. The man was pinned against the wall by Nathan, his eyes filled with fear, but still trying to maintain a defiant look. Nathan tightened his grip on the man's arm, his voice low and cold. "Tell me, what is Genesis doing here? Why are these dogs being kept in captivity? And don't even think about lying." The man scoffed, but his smile revealed his weakness. "You don't know what you're messing with, cop. Genesis isn't just an organization, they're a force. Touch them, and you're just asking for trouble." Nathan stepped back, his cold eyes seeming to see through the lies. "I don't need your sermon. I want the truth. Max stood beside Nathan, growling low in his throat, his watchful eyes never leaving the man. Max's presence made the atmosphere even more tense, a reminder that Nathan was not alone. The first clue. Finally, under the pressure from Nathan, the man sighed, his voice full of resignation. Genesis was shut down years ago, but the key players didn't disappear. They went underground, specializing in capturing dogs like Max, special animals trained to do things that humans wouldn't dare. We're just a small link receiving and transferring shipments. What happens after that isn't my business. Nathan clenched his fist, feeling his anger flare up. What do they train them for? The man hesitated, then finally mumbled, experiments, combat, and even suicide missions. The answer left Nathan stunned. He turned to look at Max, now not just a poor dog, but a living testament to Genesis's cruelty. What did they do to you, Max? Nathan muttered, his eyes filled with sorrow. Max let out a soft groan, as if responding to his unspoken question. A new threat. Just as Nathan was about to continue his interrogation, a loud noise echoed from the front door. The headlights of a vehicle shone brightly into the warehouse, accompanied by the roar of an engine. Nathan turned around just in time to see a black SUV stop right in front of the door. The vehicle's door opened, and a group of people in black entered armed. Genesis's cleanup team, the man exclaimed, his face pale. They're here to take care of you. Nathan had no time to react further. He quickly pulled Max behind a large stack of crates, his hand resting on the gun at his side. Max, stay quiet, he whispered, his voice low but firm. The standoff. The strangers entered, their eyes scanning every corner of the warehouse. Erase all traces. Leave no witnesses. One of them ordered, his voice sharp as a razor. Nathan knew he had to act fast. He whispered to Max, "You're going to help me, Max. We can't let them get away." Max looked up at Nathan, his eyes shining with determination. The dog understood that this wasn't just Nathan's fight, but also an opportunity to protect other animals like him. Nathan grabbed a metal rod nearby and threw it toward the opposite side. The sound caught the group's attention, temporarily distracting them. In that moment, Nathan sprang from his hiding spot, quickly overpowering one of the leaders, bending his arm behind his back and pressing the gun to his temple. "Stop, or he dies!" Nathan yelled, his voice echoing through the warehouse. The remaining group paused, their guns still raised, their eyes filled with suspicion. "You don't know what you're doing, cop," one of them said. "Genesis will crush you." Nathan tightened his grip on the man he had subdued, his gaze as sharp as ice. "Maybe, but before that happens, I'll make sure what you've done comes to light. And I'll start by destroying this place." A dangerous choice. A small growl echoed. Max, from his hiding place, sprang forward and took down one of the remaining men, causing the group to falter. Taking advantage of the situation, Nathan subdued the man he was holding and quickly pulled Max out of the danger zone. "We need to go now," Nathan shouted, his eyes scanning for an escape route. He knew he was up against an organized group and that escaping wouldn't be easy. But he didn't stop. With Max by his side, Nathan ran out of the warehouse, the headlights of the vehicle still chasing them. His heart was filled with rage, but mixed in with it was a strong sense of determination. Genesis thinks they can do anything without anyone stopping them. But this time, they've met the wrong person. Max ran beside him, a clear affirmation that they wouldn't give up. And in that moment, Nathan knew he wasn't just fighting for Max, but for all the weak creatures abandoned in Genesis's dark world. Nathan dashed out of the warehouse area, with Max running close beside him, the dog's heavy breaths blending with the pounding of his own heart. Behind them, the headlights of the black SUV illuminated the wet, pothole-ridden road. Nathan knew they were being hunted, and this time, there was no room for mistakes. The SUV revved its engine, the screeching sound of tires on the road echoing. Nathan pulled Max into a narrow alleyway between two old warehouses, where the darkness could shield them. He exhaled, gripping his gun tightly, while checking on Max's condition. "Are you okay, Max?" he asked, his voice low and hoarse. Max lifted his head, his eyes glowing in the darkness, as if to say the dog would never give up. Nathan nodded slightly. "Good. We need to figure out how to end this, and quickly. A bold plan. Nathan scanned the area around them, trying to find an advantage. To the right was another warehouse with shattered windows, its interior dark. To the left was an abandoned truck, its body rusted. Clearly, this was an area that no one would interfere with. They think they can corner us, Nathan muttered, his eyes glinting with determination. But they don't know that Max and I never back down when we're in a tough spot. Nathan patted Max on the head. Listen, I need you to follow my lead. We're splitting up. I'll lure them here, and you'll hide in that truck. When I give the signal, you charge out and distract them. Got it? Max stared at Nathan. The slight nod of the dogs had a silent agreement. Facing danger, Nathan stepped out from cover, gun firmly in hand. He deliberately made noise by kicking a metal barrel, letting the sound echo into the distance. From afar, the headlights immediately swept toward him, followed by a shout. He's over there. Nathan ran back toward the warehouse, the SUV's headlights growing nearer. In the darkness, he could sense Max waiting, the dog's body tense, ready to spring into action. As the strangers stepped out of the vehicle, Nathan yelled loudly, his voice challenging. Come get me if you dare. One of them raised a gun, but Nathan was quicker. He fired a shot into the man's leg, causing him to fall with a painful scream. The others charged forward, but just then, Max leaped from the shadows, his barking resounding throughout the area. The dog aimed straight for the nearest man, sinking his teeth into his arm, causing the gun to fall to the ground. The man screamed, trying to free himself from Max's grip, but the dog didn't let go. Nathan seized the opportunity, rushing forward to knock out the second man before he could draw his weapon. A dangerous choice. Amid the chaos, Nathan realized time was not on their side. From a distance, the sound of another engine roared, perhaps reinforcements from Genesis. He turned back to see Max still pinning down another man, the dog's thin body seemingly unaware of limits. Max, come here. Nathan shouted. Max released the man and turned back toward Nathan. But at that moment, one of the remaining men had managed to pick up the gun and aimed it straight at Nathan. You think you can beat us? He snarled. Nathan stood still, his eyes cold, though inside he was boiling with helplessness. The man prepared to pull the trigger when a bark from Max startled him. Max charged forward, knocking the gun aside. The gunshot echoed across the area, the bullet grazing Nathan's hand. But he didn't stop. He rushed forward and landed a precise punch on the man's face, knocking him out completely. Hope in the darkness. When all the strangers lay still on the ground, Nathan gasped for breath, one hand clutching his injured shoulder. He crouched down beside Max, checking for any injuries on the dog. You're crazy, Max, but you saved my life, he whispered, his voice raspy. Max leaned his head against Nathan's hand, panting, but his eyes still shone with trust. Nathan looked back at the unconscious men, his eyes full of determination. This isn't over. We still have work to do, Max. From deep within the shadows, Max wagged his tail slightly, as if giving a silent agreement. Nathan felt the bond between them grow stronger than ever. Even though Genesis remained a formidable force, Nathan knew he wasn't fighting alone. Max was a warrior, and together, they would topple all darkness. The sun began to rise on the horizon, its first rays piercing through the mist that covered the industrial area. Nathan stepped out from the darkness, with Max walking closely beside him. Both were tired, but their eyes still shone with determination. The black SUV stood motionless at a street corner, and behind them, Genesis's men lay slumped, tightly bound, waiting for the police to arrive. Nathan sat down beside Max, placing his hand on the dog's head, feeling the warmth from its breath. We've done part of it, Max, he whispered, but Genesis hasn't stopped. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Max tilted its head to look at Nathan, its eyes full of trust. It wasn't an ordinary dog. It was a warrior, a companion, and a testament to survival despite all the pain. Nathan looked into those eyes and knew that Max was ready to go on, no matter the hardships ahead. The difficult choice? Nathan held his phone, about to call Clara to let her know that Max was safe. But his gaze shifted to the Genesis file he had taken from the warehouse. Inside were names, locations, and clues that could lead him to the heart of this organization. If I continue, this will not only be dangerous for me, but for Max as well. But if I stop, Genesis will continue to destroy innocent lives. Can I choose not to? He turned to Max, as if searching for an answer. What do you think, little one? Should we go on? Or is this the time to turn back and start a new life? Max didn't answer, but its tail wagged slightly, as if in silent agreement. Nathan smiled, but the smile was mixed with both hope and worry. Nathan and Max's story is not just a battle between light and darkness, between good and evil. It raises a bigger question. When faced with injustice and cruelty, do we have the courage to stand up, or do we turn our backs and look away? In modern life, issues like animal trafficking, illegal experimentation on living creatures, and the exploitation of weak beings continue to persist. Many choose to ignore them, thinking they lack the power to change the world. But just like Nathan, each of us has the ability to make a difference, even if it's a small one. Max symbolizes the creatures that have endured the cruelty of human hands, but it also proves the power of trust and resilience. Nathan, as an ordinary human, reminds us that small actions, when coming from the heart, can change a life, or even a world. A question for the audience. Nathan stands at a crossroads. Continue facing off against Genesis, putting himself and Max on a dangerous journey that could end this evil organization forever. Or he could turn back, begin a peaceful life with Max, and accept that not every battle can be won. If you were him, which path would you choose? Remember, your answer is not just for Nathan and Max. It's also how you face injustice in your own life. Will you stand up, or will you turn away?